Probably. Okay, let's just start with this simple self-massage technique, I suppose you could call it, tapping exercise. Standing comfortably, rubbing your hands together. Feel the warmth in your hands and then tapping over your face. Quite light but rapid. Work up over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and then your arm. Noticing the sensation, maybe your fingers vibrate a little bit when you tap your arm, whatever else there is to notice. The other side. Then coming around to your back, just the lower part of your back with one hand or with both hands, whatever is more comfortable for you. Around your hips. And then your legs. The belly. And the upper part of your chest. Now, glasses back on, I can see. Okay, so standing with your feet hip width apart. I'll go into a bit more detail with that later. Hips just dropping back and turning in this center part of your body between hips and waist. So at this point, and really, I suppose this is something that will run through the entire practice. We could think in terms of there being two things going on. One is just a general sense of bringing your attention, your thoughts and memories and so on and so forth into your body to ground and to center yourself mentally. To do that by just simply being aware of what's going on in your body. From that point of view, whatever's going on is just fine. And we're using our movements, we're using an awareness of our posture, maybe our breathing and other things as anchors, hooks, which will just allow our thoughts to settle a bit rather than constantly wandering around. And this is an ongoing process for all of us, I think, that our thoughts drift out and quite reasonably in some ways. But we also don't want to drift away too far. I think the anchoring analogy is a good one, a useful one, because a boat that when it's anchored on the water, or on the land beneath the water, as it were, it will move around, but it won't drift away all the way. From that point of view, we don't need to do anything more. And so this sense of spaciousness begins to arise in our minds because as our thoughts begin to quieten, it's like being in a room where suddenly everybody goes quiet because somebody's going to speak, and it's just less crowded. This is always an important element in Tai Chi, and it's one of the reasons we're saying Tai Chi first in the mind. But it's not the whole story, because the other side of this is the Tai Chi, Qigong arts that encourage and help us to cultivate better posture, better movement, better awareness, a deeper awareness. And this is, again, an ongoing process of constant refinement. So from that point of view, and if we're interested in notions of energy moving within the body, we need to begin to refine our posture and our movements, to move in a particular way according to the tradition of Tai Chi. And always remember, this is a a living, ongoing tradition. It's not, hasn't reached its final point, if there is one. And this depends on that ability to recognize what is going on. So one of the interesting ways of looking at this for me is to use the term cultivation. And if you're a gardener, especially at this time of year, you're going to go out into your garden, and the first thing you're going to do is look and think, all right, the weeds growing over there, I want that plant to grow better, and so on and so forth. And then you go into the process of finding ways to encourage that to happen. So along with this settling process, which is vital, we then start to think in increasingly subtle ways about our posture, how that can be refined, how that changes as we begin to refine it. And this deepens the sense of awareness. So working with structure, working with posture, again, has this twofold aspect to it. As we refine our posture, something else becomes apparent, that there are movements within the body, call it flow, momentum, energy. Try not to get caught up on labels at this point. But when we have an improved posture, then that movement becomes more fluid, more harmonious, stronger, more effective, and so on and so forth. Just as when you start to weed your garden, other plants grow more successfully. So we have these three treasures of Tai Chi, of the body, of mind, and of movement, of energy. And as we become more aware of the sense of movement within the body, we become aware of blocks or areas that aren't moving so well, and then we go back to the posture, and of course awareness deepens, and so on and so forth. So this isn't a hierarchy. These three elements very much do depend on each other. Our starting point, as I hope I made clear, is just the quieting of the mind, because if you don't walk out into your garden and take a look, it's quite difficult to do anything more beyond that. But just because it's the starting point doesn't inherently mean it's the only important thing, nor is it the only thing. So this isn't a case of simply refining mind, refining attention, thinking the right way, and everything works out. You still have to do the weeding and so on and so forth. So it's useful to keep that sort of image in the back of your mind. As we begin to refine posture, we discover some things will work, whereas some things don't. And so, again, the cultivation element. You may walk out into your garden and maybe you've seen a photograph somewhere, you have an idea of kind of wonderful flowers growing or whatever it is, and it's full of rubble and it's full of weeds and it's not going to work. You have to walk the path. So I'm not suggesting this is simply mind over matter, or that the process stops at that simple awareness and along with that a kind of nice thought or something. But we can use that awareness. We can increasingly influence body and energy through the subtle use of awareness, moving into something that I would call intention. The mind almost offers instructions to the body in various ways, through ideas, through images, through memories. Those of you who've done this before, you'll have a memory of what's going on. So thinking a little bit more about posture. As I said, feet are hip width apart. And this there's some variation in this. You could measure it from the inside of your foot, measure it from the outside of your foot, or any point in between. The reason for this is that when we stand like this, we've got support for our hips, and our hips can support our shoulders. So just consider this aspect of how your body's supported. A lot of the time, we're very stiff, we're very tight, we're focusing on holding ourselves upright. And we don't always get a sense of how the natural structures of our body can actually support us without that tightness, without that stiffness. This involves bringing together those three treasures, and it involves broadening our awareness of what's going on in the body so we can make use of it more. We start off, you recognize, obviously, you're standing, then your legs are supporting you. We also want to feel, I'll show you from the side, that our back supports the front of our body. But rather than pulling our belly in or tightening our chest or our shoulders, we just let the front of the body hang slightly. It goes against much of what we've grown up with, I think, in terms of what we think posture should be. It's sometimes said that our chest, for instance, should have a concave feel rather than puffed out. So legs and back support, and this helps us to begin to release some of the tightness in the body, and we can become increasingly aware of something within the body that continues to support us when, say, for instance, we manage to lose some of that tightness in our shoulders for a few moments. Our arms don't drop off. There's a structure there. We can think initially, I think, of the skeleton, but in the end, it's going to be more than just the skeleton. It's that whole area, a kind of denser feeling, perhaps, within it. The phrase often used in Tai Chi is that outside there's the softness of cotton, inside there's the strength of steel. Cotton is soft but very strong. Steel is a metal and strong, but in metallic terms is relatively soft. And we can think of this in various ways. A personal image for me is of a balloon. And if you get a balloon and you inflate it and then you start to push your finger in, you'll find more and more resistance, but it would never be like poking your finger into a wall. There would always be a kind of, let's call it, a softness there. And one of the things that we want to try and do, and really, particularly for people who've been doing Tai Chi for a while, is to lose that sense of outside and inside. We want to feel that sense of that resilience, that strength within the body. So the common term is inner strength, and this is one of the big sort of goals in Tai Chi practice for many of us. But I sometimes use the term resilience. Somebody the other day, I was talking about this, suggested to me that stamina was an aspect of this. I think that's quite an interesting view, particularly perhaps people who are working with some kind of long-term health condition that can be very tiring. There is a source of stamina, there is a source of energy there. And one of the most important ways that we begin to cultivate this in the solo exercises is by using our minds, our awareness, to develop an image that changes how our brain assumes it is thinking about what's going on around us. And at the moment, you're probably thinking, this is thin air. We're used to walking, moving around in thin air. But if we replace that idea with an image of moving through water, then this will start to change how our body is moving. It's assuming that there's a resistance there, but it's not a hard resistance. It's just most of us in water will recognize that we don't want to stiffen up, we don't want to tighten, that a kind of what we call a softer, more supple approach to movement is actually a far better way of moving through water. And this is one of the things that we're trying to reproduce. Softening doesn't mean easy, because there is resistance there that we're still moving through. So this too is one of the ongoing sort of background awarenesses, background intentions in Tai Chi. There's a number of these, and I might borrow an idea from modern computing, where if you're watching this on your computer, you've got the surface of what's going on, the film, the video. But while you do that, there's any number of things happening below the surface, most of which I've got no idea what they are, but some people know what they are. Otherwise, the whole thing wouldn't work. So a kind of subconscious area of attention and intention that we only really deliberately affect when it fails. So when we lose that image of moving through water, for instance, the quality of the movement changes. It doesn't quite feel right to those of us who have been doing Tai Chi for a while, and we can recall that image. So yeah, there are again various levels. It's not a hierarchy, it's just a question of what is appropriate. Another aspect of posture, perhaps arguably the primary one, the one that we start with, is to allow our weight, our center of gravity, to drop. And this is where, again, posture becomes so important. This is the rooting down. Rooting down is the source of the stability that we get from Tai Chi. Rooting down provides the foundation for everything else in Tai Chi in many ways. Rooting down will deepen this sense of your attention being grounded, because it's a deliberate, conscious thing, until we lose it, and then we realize we're not rooted, and then once again we bring our attention back to the process of rooting down. And rooting down is also a major sense of the movement, the energy. Go into a bit more detail of the posture. Now just raise your arms. So all these things are going on in this sort of opening of the session. And at the same time, of course, you're gradually refining posture, you're warming your body up, you're warming your muscles up. So we can't and we should not be overlooking those important physical elements of the practice. This is a moving meditation. And so the movement is of the body, the meditative element is of the mind, of the movements of the body and energy. And we need all three. And just drop your hands down. So thinking about the refinement of posture a little bit. Many of you would have done this with me before if you train with me regularly, but it's always worth coming back because it's not a fixed thing. Just begin to gently rock your weight forwards and backwards. And I'm pivoting from the ankles, and you can begin to feel your weight moving in the feet. So when I go forwards, my weight is more in the forwards of my feet and my toes. When I go back, it's more in my heels. And if I go too far, everything goes wrong. So one of the things that we're looking for is some kind of central point, some kind of point of equilibrium. I'm trying to avoid the term balance here, but use it. So if I were to get this pole, in theory, I can find a position for the pole that would allow it to remain upright, and I could just take my hand away and that wouldn't happen. In practice, of course, it's not that easy, but it isn't complicated at this stage. But we do need to be aware of how our body is responding to this change. So just see if you can come to a point where you feel that your weight is going down into your feet. The, if you like, official point would be just behind the ball of each foot. But this is where we again bring back that awareness. It might not be the right place for you at the moment. There's a physical conditioning process that is ongoing in Tai Chi. This is a profound change of posture for us, and our body needs time to adapt. But if I bring my weight slightly forward, I'm exaggerating a little bit now, and then just thinking of this area of lower back and belly, hips and buttocks, thighs and knees. Just try a little experiment here. Very gently, say for instance, put your belly in and tighten your back, and then just let that tension release. And notice that there's a general sense of downward and inward movement. Gravity's acting on your hips, And as you stop resisting the pull of gravity, they're going to get a sense of dropping down. And try and just keep that focus of attention on the air and the hips. So that the first posture, the first stance that we use, called the Wu Chi stance, which is being translated to something like primal or beginning, is to go from this stance that we often habitually carry of straining against the pull of gravity to aligning our body and then allowing gravity just to draw the hips down. And these will bend slightly. And we'll get a general sense of just dropping down. And this will take some of the strain away from the upper part. There's less weight for our shoulders to carry. And so we can begin to get a sense of just settling, stillness. And because body and mind are connected, the stillness of the body is also reflected in stillness of the mind and vice versa. And again, there's almost a paradox here that stillness is an essential component of the movements that we're going to make. Now, without straining in your knees, just let your hips go back a little bit further. And then before it becomes a trial, you'll feel yourself being pushed up and down. So now we go down a little bit deeper and we begin to find that this is actually a source of movement, source of energy. The act of dropping down actually gives us the potential for the upward movement, where you're contracting and expanding. And again, this is not a complicated or even a particularly unusual idea, but it's an ongoing process. If I only get a ball and drop the ball on the ground, it will bounce up. If I don't drop the ball down, it's not going to bounce up. So we start to get this sense of a rise in movement, a rise in energy coming out of the ground, out of our feet. And this is one of the principal energies, not the only one, but one of the principal energies that we use in Tai Chi. You may find already, and this can vary, but you may find that there's a sense in which your breathing sort of picks up on this rhythm of the movement. If it doesn't, then don't worry, don't strain for that. Bring your hands around as though you're now cradling a ball in your arms. And as you come up, let that movement upwards like a wave coming underneath the ball. Push your hands up, turn them over, let your hips drop, then your shoulders, and then your arms forward. Now try not to get distracted by your arms. So again, come closer so you can see something. And here, I'm going to really exaggerate this idea. So I'm up here, I turn my hands over, I imagine the ball underneath my arms. It's like I'm in water, trying to push the ball down into water. And the first thing I want to do is to drop my hips. And then my hips drop and that stretches my back out a little bit. And then that contracts and my shoulders begin to drop. And as my shoulders drop, you can see my elbows are being pulled down. And as they get pulled down, my hands fall. The reverse movement, I push up, my hips go up, and there's a sort of compression in my back that then pushes my shoulders up, and then that pulls my arms up. So that was very, very exaggerated. But from the top of the movement here, just in your mind, have this idea: hips, shoulders, arms. And as you go up, once again, hips, shoulders, arms. Or again, as you get more experience in this, that process can become a lot more subtle and a lot more detailed. You may notice changes in your back and your sides and elsewhere in your body. You're gradually developing a sense of movement, of energy moving through your whole body. You're able to observe this because a part of your attention is resting in that stillness. And through that observation, you're able to work out where you might want to bring changes. And maybe you've got a hip out of line. Maybe you need to move your feet a little bit. Maybe you're just putting too much effort into the shoulders. Maybe there's some of those annoying tight areas within the body. We want to bring some kind of image to them. We can use an image like a knot. Sometimes we get the feel that that image is knotted up. And so we find ways to unpick the knot. I sometimes use the image of a rock in a riverbed being slowly eroded away and smoothed off by the flow of the water. And we use a variety of images, a variety of different movements. You may find a different exercise works better. So as your experience in these arts grows, so we become more effective at actually beginning to release areas of blockage that are interrupting the flow of the movement. Going back to the cultivation image, we're better at noticing the weeds and the things that are blocking the growth. So this exercise, rooting down, encapsulates much of what we're trying to maintain and to build through all of the movements. A change in the exercise, same thing in your hips. Turn your hands out, push up, rather push out. The push up from the ground, and that expansion pushes your hands out. We have the movement, the wild goose. So if the image of the bird in flight conveys some kind of quality, you may choose to bring that into the movement. If an image is used that doesn't work for you, don't immediately chase after it. Sometimes it's worth investigating these images over a period of time. But we don't want to get distracted, you know, you don't want to think, oh, bird, what does the bird look like? Or anything. If it doesn't immediately resonate, then just let it be. Bring your attention back to the physical mechanics of the movement. And then this time, same again in the hips, hands coming down, crossing over, push up, elbows being pushed out, drawing your fingers around in a circle. This is parting the clouds. And if the image, you know, a grey day and then suddenly the cloud breaks and the sun comes out, if that offers you a sense of opening up, a sense of expansiveness, a sense of warmth perhaps, then it's a useful image. Next, letting your hands come down to your sides, bringing your attention to one side of your body, your intention to one side of your body. Again, your elbow gets pushed out. This time, drawing your fingers straight up. Wind around as though you're plucking something off a tree. Pull down. The arm come down to its full length. Move to the other side. And same thing. This is dragon plucks the stars. People with more experience, make sure you haven't gone on to automatic pilot. It's a very simple exercise to remember, and you can be there, your arms swinging up and down, wondering where you're going to do your shopping later or something like that. Focus on the detail of the movement, the expansion through one side of your body, like an elastic band stretching out, and then the contraction. Don't go immediately to the opposite side. Bring your attention to the middle of your body and then to the foot on the other side of your body, and then start the whole process over again. So we cultivate this ability to keep part of our attention very grounded, very centered in body. And at the same time, can begin to become aware of the movement outwards, the yang elements of the practice as we reach out. This is not suggesting by any means that you sort of cut yourself off. One more time. And then sink down again. Now let your hands drop down. What we've been doing so far is hips are going down and then pushing up. There's a very clear mechanical element here. The next few movements, it becomes more subtle, that we can maintain the sense of hips dropping down, feeling, I sometimes described as though you're kind of overhanging slightly in your lower back, your hips, your buttocks. So you're aware of that downward movement, and because we know that we haven't collapsed, there has to be an upward movement. Becoming aware of that upward movement, so that dynamic still exists within the body. Bring your hands to your sides, and then pushing up just a little bit, feel the lengthening in your back, and then bring your hands back down to the side of your body next to your center. Again, and this time pushing your hands out to the sides and turn just a little, and back. The other side, recognizing that the movement in the center of your body has a massive influence on what happens in your arms, and then facing forwards and pushing out. So we've got 4 directions of movement, largely governed by where our center is fixed. Back to the beginning, 1. And back. And as you bring your hands back down, look for a feeling of releasing again in your hips. 2. And again, with the contraction, with your hands coming back to the center, releasing again. 3. And when you turn, don't turn too far. Don't overdo the movement. The overall quality of the movement should feel as though you're being very gently massaged within the body. So again, this helps to release tightness and promote a flow of energy within the body. But also this exercise in particular, I think, is a good one for really recognizing the significance of this center part of our body between hips and waist, recognizing that it's this part of the body that we want to drop towards the ground. It's this part of our body that we return to, both mind and body, on a regular basis. So in many ways, that central part of the body becomes the physical location for that part of our awareness that's looking to be still, looking to just observe. And it becomes the part of our body through which we feed the intention to the rest of the body. So we very literally become more centered. And for people with some experience in these arts, don't take that for granted. The better you know the movements, the easier it is to do them on automatic. And we want to maintain quality of intention. And we want to remain aware of the center. And this can be quite challenging in a busy life where there is much going on. One recommendation I would make, particularly for people with experience, is that every now and then maybe take this exercise regularly and think, well, I'm going to do it for half an hour, not just 2 minutes. But can I maintain that focus of attention over that period of time? Well, we will change now. So let your hands drop down, and this time, again, focusing on the expansion on one side, pushing your arm out and up, and then one realization is that we do lose that focus of attention. Just as our hand goes out, so does our attention, and that helps us to be more aware of our environment in one way or another. But the movement itself contains the rhythm that brings our attention back. This time, as you extend out, if it's comfortable for you, you turn a little bit again in the center of the body. One more time. Change sides. Feeling the movement within the body, maybe bring in a sense of discrimination. You know, is this movement tight in your shoulder? Maybe you should be moving smaller movements. Maybe you can just imagine, for instance, somebody gently pressing down on your shoulder to prevent it rising up, and noticing how your body responds to that. Adding the turn. Never moving too far. This is not a competition. More round. Now going back to the movement we did before, of our hips actually physically dropping and then being pushed up. Up until now, we've done this with the awareness of our center of our body remaining level. This time, as you sink down, gently push your hips back. I'm exaggerating again, so don't really have to go a long way. Be careful with your back. From this position, now let gravity pull your hips down and then push up. So still using that center of your body with a vertical rotation this time, and using the pull of gravity to rotate the center of the body and to bring our head and shoulders up very gently. And then letting your arms follow. This is rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Careful not to overextend. Notice here, as I extend out, my elbows are hanging down slightly, my fingers are soft. And then I'll get to here, and there's just a moment I give myself to settle in again before I push up. Don't rush this. But notice how when we bring our body into line, when we allow gravity to work through our hips, coming upright is much less of a strain. Once again, you are supported. This time, bring your hands sort of placing palm down, turning, pushing the hips back. Now swing across and let your hips drop down, come back, facing forward, and then turning the other way, swing around and side, and back bar. See how my hips are moving. Once again, recognizing this significance of changes and movements within the center of the body and how they affect the whole of it. called polishing the chain. One more in each direction. And then just stand. So when we bring these three elements of body, mind, and movement, body, mind, and energy together, and we can start to use them, we become more skilled at using all of them, we realize there's a very practical element here. This isn't just some kind of esoteric art concerned with energy and so on and so forth. We can actually stand upright with less strain, with more ease. That again helps to enhance the energy, the flow of the movement, and that again brings our attention more deeply into the body to provide greater awareness and so on. Now, continuing this sort of practical element, with your feet hip width apart, turn one foot out and step straight forward with the other one. So you see the space between my legs is still there. It's about the same in length. Move your weight more into your back foot. This time you feel the compression, you feel gravity pulling you down. Instead of letting it push you up, you let it push you forwards. Settle down into the front foot and then sink back. Your knees may bend a bit more, but be careful with that. What they shouldn't do is ever lock. But more importantly is to consider this element of the releasing feeling. Remember I said releasing back and hips and so on. So you get a greater sense of being pushed up. And we realize that sense of the movement, the energy that we're beginning to cultivate actually helps you to move. This, you'll see that this leads to walking and stepping. If we practice these things, these aspects of mind, body, and energy, they become much more natural to us, and we'll start to see evidence of them in our daily life. We'll start to move around better, be more stable. We perhaps have more stamina, more energy. You can raise your toes and so more of your weight going down. Not only do we have more of this energy and we're more stable, we're able to be more aware of what's going on around us. We're less distracted. We have that sense of groundedness and centeredness, more aware of the ground beneath our feet and how we're sinking into or not sinking in that, how we move through the world, how we relate to each other, how we deal with obstacles in our lives and so on and so forth. Again, it's a very practical element to these arts. Just see at this point you can now bring your foot in, step out, put your heel down, lower your toes, press gently into the floor and then go forwards. And then try the same thing, bring your back foot in. This time put the ball of the foot down, then the heel, press in, go back. That pressing in is referred to as planting. Again, that kind of gardening metaphors. Shaking. And then on the other side, this is a brilliant exercise for conditioning our legs. If you have problems, set your knees or your ankles, this will help to condition the muscles and soft tissue of your legs, give those joints more support. It's a really great exercise for improving mobility, for maintaining stability while we're being mobile. And it's the foundation for many other movements in Tai Chi, as you'll see. Raising your toes and your heel. Many of these exercises, for all of them really, repay long-term practice. I started Tai Chi in 1983. This is the third exercise I ever did in that very first class. Yeah, I still practice this and I'm still finding out more about it. It's an ongoing refinement and stepping in. And it may be that that's where the cultivation analogy is good again, because we don't go out and garden once. We don't go out and pull the weeds out and think, right, that's it for the rest of the summer. It's an ongoing process. We get more stable, not by straining, but by releasing. If you're having problems with that, then use a little bit of support. Go into one leg, don't feel too stable, hold on to something, give yourself a bit of support, and just see if you can bring an element of releasing. And then if you can do so safely, step through either forwards or backwards. Bring it in. Again, a good way of practicing this for people who are used to this, if you can do so safely, is try doing this on uneven ground or on an uneven surface, so that you practice this sense of being aware from moment to moment of what's actually going on beneath your feet. Change direction, we haven't done so already. And in that process, becoming aware, you actually begin to also bring a sense of intentionality to your responses. You can begin to move more easily, more stably. We can begin to move with less disruption to the flow of energy through our bodies. Often that energy gets disrupted when we're straining against gravity, or we're in a hurry and tense and so on and so forth. I'm going to do a couple of exercises with you, bringing the arms back into those movements. Just try not to get distracted by your arms. Start with your weight in your back foot. Our arms would dominate the whole scene if we're not careful. So remember that idea that the background awareness, the background intentions. Hold your hands over your belly. Push forwards. Let that movement push your elbows out, and that will separate your arms through your chest. So pigeon spreads its wings, and then going back. Don't pull your arms back. Rather, as you go forwards, your arms go forward, and they naturally swing up and out a little bit, but not behind your shoulders. And then feeling in front of your body as you go forwards, a sense of expansion, which then begins to contract. You may be aware of the feeling of expansion in your back. Which movements are most useful? If you could bring your intention to different parts of the body to enhance the movement, where would be a good place to be? Pigeon spreads its wings. This time, when you come back, rest in the back foot, let your hands drop down, go forwards, and notice how the arms now get pulled through. It's called fisherman casting. And again, where are the patterns of expansion and contraction, particularly in the upper part of your body? Do you still have a sense of your weight sinking down, that movement from foot to foot? With that sense of a rise in energy each time you settle in each leg? At the moment, we're facing forwards, we're moving forwards and backwards, arms swinging forwards and backwards. I'm going to change that now. So this time, as you go back, turning, drawing your hands across the bodies. Other than that, nothing's changed yet. But the internal patterns will have changed. expanding in your left side, expanding in your right side, coming back, expand a little bit more in the left, letting your hands come up, and then letting gravity draw them down to turn in, to bring them across the front hip and then expanding. So now your fingers are tracing out a sort of sideways figure of eight. You might want to just imagine that shape in front of you, like a sort of template for painting the shape on a wall, so that the image is there and the intention can guide your fingers into that image. You can guide the rest of your body in guiding the hands. Now try those three movements on the other side. First of all, pigeon spreads its wings. So to begin with, when we see a new exercise, we may need to think, we copy the exercise, we're looking hard and this is happening, this is happening. But for those of you more familiar with these, one interesting thing to do is to think about the exercise as a whole. How does it feel? What's the shape of the exercise? What shape does it create in your mind, in your awareness? And can you bring a sense of intentionality that you want your body to move into that shape? And of course, that can get quite complicated. And it's not one shape either, but as a starting point, maybe just thinking, this is how it feels when it goes forwards for this exercise. We begin to recognize the huge significance of intentionality. And this is one of the clear ways, I think, that we begin to progress in this art. Not that the physical movements ever become unimportant, but we begin to realize their interconnectedness with mind and various aspects of attention and intention, and with an awareness of the flow of the movement and how that can be influenced. Changing now to fisherman cast a net, there's a change in intention, there's a change in the shape that we imagine. Just don't feel you have to do all of this. Which bits of what I'm saying resonate the most with you? Don't reject the others. Focus on those things that are working for you. Have some confidence that those other elements will arise for you, will begin to work for you at some point. Fisherman cast a net and then turning. This is an alternative version of fisherman cast a net at this point. But it also leads nicely into that figure of eight movement. You can come back. The intention is to expand a little bit more in that right side of your body. Turn and then a little bit more in that left side of your body. Try not to just stand there kind of waving your arms around. Feel what it's like when your whole body moves as one unit. This too becomes one of those constant intentions. This is how we want to move, not just when we're doing Tai Chi, but all the time. Now, I'm going to turn my front foot out. You can do this again, going forwards or backwards, going into my front foot. And as I turn now, I bring my back foot in, step through, again, heel, toes, plant, and then push. Again. And if you're comfortable with this, you can do so safely, just raising foot up. I'm going to change direction. And you can go in any direction. I'm going forwards and backwards because that's the most appropriate for the space that I'm in. But I could turn. So for instance, I could do this. To think about it, yeah, go to here and then go there, and so on and so forth. Or again, this can be interesting and for all of us, and particularly perhaps if you're feeling a little less stable, going from side to side, you could have the wall behind you. And that can actually, again, instill a sense of confidence. Let's remind yourself how you're supported already. Come back to that. And don't think for a moment that you've got all that confidence. Can be interesting the effect it has. And sometimes I find I'm doing something that I think I can do, and then I think, oh, there's more to learn here. So having that sense of the support behind you can actually open up areas, even if you're quite experienced at this. You go forwards again. You don't have to go a long way if you haven't got much space. Go back. So this is a very adaptable exercise. One that can really give you the sense of how all these different elements in Tai Chi can come into our body, can come into our movements and into our lives. And now just come back and once again come into the parallel stance. And just stay here for a moment. How does this feel now, compared perhaps to how it felt at the beginning of the class? How does it go? Are you more aware of the feet? When you feel the sense of gravity putting them there? Can you bring a focus of attention to those areas, that movement within your body? Get a greater sense of this quality of this, the stillness. Is it, can you be more aware of the center part of your body? Bring more of your attention into that area. And you feel supported. And if you don't, if none of those are working for you, can you find a way to actually enhance those, to cultivate those? We can perhaps bring in this final exercise that closes the session, letting yourself sink down again, hips dropping back, the sun push up. Again, a bit like the wild goose, but now let your arms come around as though they're going to hold the ball against your chest. Drawing your hands in, feel the pull of gravity on your hips, drawing you down and back. Maybe just touching that sense of the root, stillness. It's called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. And for me, the mountain encapsulates much of what I've been talking about. It's a great image of both stillness, with a very dynamic element, of something that is deeply rooted, very strong, yet also quite spacious. What does actually work? What will bring your attention back? What would be most useful to you when you're in the supermarket and can't quite find what you want, and it's crowded and busy? And perhaps you could do just that sense of the mountain. You know, what would it be? The pull of gravity on your hips, the feeling in your shoulders or your back? Just to remind you of this possibility of the root, the strength that can come out of the root. Your ability to find a sense of stillness that enables you to see outwards more clearly. When you get to the top of the mountain, it's clear you can see a long way. So there are very practical tools available to us. one more time. Just thank you very much, everybody. I hope that was useful. I hope you can see that these ideas can be quite esoteric and yet at the same time quite practical for us. Do feel free to contact me if you have any questions. But we're finished now. Thank you for joining in.